Everyone, and welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. We're all doing well. If you've seen this pink shirt already today, it's because I'm on to the second podcast of the day. I had to, vent about the NFL officiating and talk some hockey earlier. But after a little week hiatus where we talked some hockey last week, Shamus and I are back to start talking about season 5, the last season of Breaking Bad. And it's interesting. It's 16 episodes, so it's the longest season of the show. Definitely different from season 4, Shay, but I do like the way this season starts. I like how we're still talking about Gustavo Fring. We get into a lot of interesting topics, but I enjoy the last season of the show. Yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. If you think a lot of great shows, they sometimes die down with anticlimactic. You think of, Game of Thrones being one. I know you haven't watched the last season. No reason to either. But yeah, there's a ton to like about this season, and the length is important because I feel like they give themselves enough room to get every single detail ironed out before it ends, I guess. So no, it's good to have a little extension on that, I find.
Yeah, unlike Game of Thrones. Again, I think they had 6 episodes or something in the last
7 episodes. Yeah, 7. In the last season, it was highly disappointing.
7 episodes, like 7.
Yeah.
What is this, amateur hour? I saw this preview. I don't know if you had seen it yet, but Ozark season 4 part 1 is coming out early January.
I didn't know that. I knew it was coming out in the new year, but I didn't realize was there a trailer for it?
Yeah.
Oh God, I know what I'm doing directly after this. You and Warman were the ones who got me hooked on the old Ozark, and I had to say, through the pandemic and most of 2020 was probably one of my favorite shows. Anyone who hasn't watched it, it's well worth a watch for sure. Binge worthy in my mind.
I love season 1, but I think season 3 was even better. It was such great television. The acting of Jason Bateman and Wendy's brother in particular, I thought was incredible. He plays a schizophrenic, and I thought he should have won an award for it, but nevertheless. So we ended 2 weeks ago talking about the end of season 4, where, if you can all remember, Walter talks to his old buddy not really Hector Salamanca. Hector hates him. He's in the wheelchair. He's always the one dinging the bell. But what do we know? What Hector hates Gus more than he hates Walter, because he killed all of his family. So he's relishing this opportunity to get back at him. They lure him to the nursing home. They blow up. He blows himself up with Gus a foot away. The biggest drug kingpin in Albuquerque / the area is now dead. So we're kind of left with Hank, being correct about Gustavo, and we're kind of picking out the pieces here, Shay.
Yeah, at least, we talked about it 2 weeks ago. Like we said, we kind of debated on why the show wouldn't have been there with the greatest threat being kind of pulled out of the picture. But there's still a ton, obviously, still not that we don't know. Obviously, who killed Gus is a big question that starts off this season. What kind of affiliates did he have with other people? We find out, and also, stuff going on with, Walter and his wife, because clearly we don't get the reaction maybe we thought we were going to get when we initially ended the season for season 4.
Right. Yeah. You kind of thought maybe Skylar would be relieved, but we'll get into how she's afraid of her husband. And there's some awkward scenes that we get in these first 2 episodes of season 5. But we start with a look ahead, foreshadowing start to season 5, where we see Walt eating breakfast by himself, and he gets bacon and eggs like he did for an earlier birthday. It's just another look back where he takes the bacon and he spells out 52. And if you can remember, Skylar did that in one of the first episodes of the show. So we know it's at least 2 years after that happened. And Walter is much thinner than he is right now. I mean, he's not a large man right now. He's going through cancer, but he's extremely thin, looks quite frail, weak, and he's eating breakfast, but he's also we see that he has a New Hampshire ID.
Yeah, he's going by a totally different name. And for one, I mean, yeah, like you said, his appearance, he's got hair, which is just very, very odd to see.
Mhm.
So it's sometime in the near future, and it's not just like a buzz cut. It's actually kind of like thicker hair for an older man. He's got raggedy clothes on that a normal Walter would never wear, jeans and
Mhm.
boots and this raggedy jacket. So something's definitely off. And like you said, he's kind of waiting there. He's making conversation with this waitress,
Waitress.
and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden this man walks in, catches his eye, and he's first you're thinking, oh god, this guy might be here to take him out, knowing Walter's history.
Hmm.
And it's not the case. He ends up meeting him in the bathroom, and they end up exchanging some money and some keys.
Yeah, and if it's a guy that we've seen before. Walt bought a gun from him before in a motel, so they do have
Right.
this connection. And yeah, they slips him a bag of cash. He gives him some keys, and it's kind of like, okay, what the hell is going on? And Walt tips the waitress $100 because she's being nice. He gets the breakfast for free because it's his birthday. And clearly he doesn't give a crap about money anymore. He never would have done this. So something's changed in the life of Walter White. And he goes to the car, pops the trunk, and we see a massive, massive machine gun in the trunk.
Yeah, for full context, if people have watched this movie, it's the machine gun where Rambo's kind of holding. It's this big, heavy artillery gun, and he's kind of going like this with it. And it's the same gun. And you're thinking, what the hell does Walter need this for? There's instructions on there and how to aim it, or how to load it and use it. And you could clearly know that something's going down. Walter didn't want anyone, like he said, across the border to know about this. So obviously he's got a hit out for somebody, but we don't know who. And this is the opening scene of the season, and it kind of wraps up with that as we kind of go back to present time.
Right. So yeah, we don't know what's going on yet. We know it's a little bit of foreshadowing, and we'll learn more about it as the season goes on. So you said back to present day, it's actually Skylar calling Walt when he says, I won, when he tells her on the phone, and basically implying that he killed Gustavo. So he goes home and he just basically starts his cleanup. He cleans up his bomb making kit, and cleans all that up, gets the garbage bags going. But as he's pouring himself a whiskey, he has to get rid of something in the backyard, Shay.
Yeah, he quickly remembers that the flower.
It's
you
a
probably
lily
have
of the
the
valley,
name.
it's called.
The lily of the valley, the flower, the one thing that could tie him to poisoning
Brock.
Jesse's kid. Well, yeah, Brock. And so he goes and he disposes that of well. So he's really getting rid of all traces of the things that could be led back to him. And then he kind of has a moment where he's enjoying, I guess in his opinion, probably a well-deserved shot of juice. So
Yeah.
before he does that, his family kind of walks in and they're like, "Oh, like where were you? Maria was so angry that you weren't there." And as soon as Skylar walks in, there's tension in the room, and you could easily cut that with a knife.
Yeah. So he's like talking to Walt Jr. So yeah, we'll watch the news in a minute. He goes in and she basically is icing him. Like, she's not saying anything. She's not looking at him. And he goes like, can you give me an hello? And she does this fortuitous hi. And he goes, well, like, don't you have nothing to worry about? Like, we're safe, this and that. But then she pipes in and she says she's relieved and scared. And Walt's like, well, of what? And then she says, of you.
Yeah, getting some season two vintage Skylar going on here, where Garrett really doesn't know, and obviously she doesn't really know what Walt's capable of. And Walter doesn't really try and hide the fact either, Juggy, that it was
No.
him. Like he could have indirectly said, "Oh, like maybe I had something to do with it, or I was just a part in it." But I mean, he's claiming the kill in this sense, where he wants to be the one. Yeah, I was the one who saved the day here.
Yeah, he needs the credit. His ego needs that. He's been through enough where people get the credit for him, and he's like, no. Like, Skylar, I killed this guy. Like, this chicken man, he's dead because of me. And yeah, you're completely right there. But he sits on the bed, drinking his scotch, looking at his baby while Skylar goes to shower. And he just goes, oh shit. And we're like, okay, what's going on? But we learned that he forgot, the guys forgot that when they were blowing up the lab, that there were security cameras in there. And through all the explosion, through all of this, it did not eliminate everything. And also, if you can recall watching from last season, who was always watching the security cameras from his office at Los Polos Hermanos? That would be one Gustavo Fring.
Yeah, this becomes a huge issue because I mean their faces are easily recognized by both guys. So, they got to make some kind of plan. And it's this funny scene where we cut to a good friend. We didn't see him a lot at the end of the season, end of season 4, but Mike makes a reappearance into the show in full form in his robe.
Yeah. Mike is. We see Mike, and he's in Mexico still. Obviously, he got shot. While they killed Don Eladio and everything, and the doctor comes out and just says to him, "It's Gustavo. He's dead." And Mike just loses it. Gets in the car, driving through the desert, going, Henry Ruggs III type speed. And he's flying like a maniac. But he meets a vehicle and he knows who it is. And it's Jesse and Walter, and they get out of the car, and Mike is ready to kill Walter where he stands.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Jesse standing in front of Walter, I mean, he would have died on the spot. Obviously, It's pretty clear that Mike, all business aside, hates Walter, hates his style, and hates who he is as a person, which is looking back is pretty reasonable to think now. But yeah, he's like move Jesse, like, kid, you don't understand. Like, I'm gonna fucking end this guy. And Jesse's like, listen, you got to listen to what he says. There's bigger problems. And Walter kind of tells him, he's like, we have one thing that ties us all back to Gus, and it's those cameras, and it's that footage of us in the lab, and God knows where else, because Gus really kept a close tab on Walter and Jesse pretty much anywhere they went, because he didn't trust them. So you have to know what they're doing pretty much every step. And he basically says, Mike, well, how do we get those footage?
Yeah, so they need to know what the police have. And they learn that the computer was at Los Polos. And so Mike, being a former cop, calls in and kind of asks, the evidence, is it logged, kind of thing. And they learn that, yep, they got the computer. It's at Albuquerque, APD, Albuquerque Police Department. And Mike basically hangs up the phone and says, we're fucked.
He's ready. He's ready to split. He's like, okay, this is it. I'm gonna take what I have and basically leave. Mm-hmm. And Walter and Jesse are like, nah, we're not doing that. We're gonna find a way to beat this. And they basically say, like, listen, like, you can be a part of this if you want. We need you, but we have no choice but to try and get rid of this. Yeah. So Mike is like, I'm not working with you, Walt. And Walt's like, well, what if a bomb happened to be in there? And Mike's like, so first of all, you think you're going to break into a police department that's guarded 24 hours a day. So you just got that urge now. You blew up an old folks home. Now you want to blow up a police department full of cops. And Walter's like, I'm not saying I want to kill anybody. And then Jesse's just sitting on the couch all the time going, hey guys, what about like a magnet? And he says this like 3 times while these two are bickering. And finally they go, what? And he goes, what about a magnet? Like, and he says like it comes together like this. And it's this funny scene, but ultimately, Shay, Walter has an idea from Jesse's, stupid idea. Yeah, kind of like the battery robot scene when they try to get the RV back up and running. It's kind of Jesse's, I guess, ignorance kind of getting in the way. Yeah. And where do we go? We get to revisit an old friend, a guy we haven't seen in a long time, but the garbage guy, or the guy who runs the dump, essentially. Yeah, the scrapyard. And he's a lot smarter than people probably perceive, because I mean, for one, he outwitted Hank, if you can
Mhm.
remember, getting
Yeah.
them out of that situation. And they're kind of looking at this giant magnet that picks up vehicles and then obviously replaces them to other places. And Walter's wheels are spinning. He's like, how can we make this work? Obviously, it's going to be very pricey, because the guy, our trash man, says, well, to rent one of these, to stop it from working for me and to rent it to you is going to be a pretty penny. And as we know, Walter is pretty
Broke.
broke at the time, because Skylar spent all their money for the payments for the IRS to Ted Beneke, but we'll get into later.
Right. So yeah, he's like, I got nothing. Jesse, I'm gonna need a loan. But so they're talking to the scrapyard, and he goes, well, we could use this device. We could use batteries like a magnet. You get close enough to the building, you ratchet up, you turn all the batteries on at once. And basically what it does is it brings the electronic device closer to you, but it also, as it gets closer, it wipes all the data that's on it. So it would serve two purposes. It would likely destroy the computer, and at the same time, if it didn't break, it would, all the data, all the info on it would be completely wiped.
Yeah, it's a fairly big risk, not knowing if it's even going to get through this building. God knows what's in it.
Right.
But obviously, they don't have a choice at this point. They either go in there guns blazing or try this magnet plan out.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to get to their test in a second, but before this happens, Saul comes to visit Skylar at the car wash, and she goes like, what the hell are you doing here? He goes, well, you see, we had a little bit of an issue. And she goes, what do you mean? Well, Ted's in the hospital, and yeah, so he kind of says like, well, so Ted's dead? And Saul goes, no. He just woke up, actually. And we pivot to Skylar at the hospital, and Ted is in bad shape.
Yeah, looks like his entire body is shaved. He's in one of those, those brackets that you wear, basically to hold up your head on its neck, because your neck doesn't have the support to do so. And Skylar's really emotional at this point. She's like, I'm so sorry, Ted. Like I had no idea. And kind of surprising, Ted's like, you will never hear a word of this. No one will ever know. Just basically don't come after me is all he asks. He's like, I don't want to deal with this ever again. I have a family. So
Yeah.
clearly Ted took this as a death threat, when Skylar's intention was not that at all.
Right. Yeah. She was just trying to do the right thing for her family. But, he seeing, Big Huel and everything, he's terrified of her. Like, he's just like, please don't hurt me. Like, can't move already. Like, just please. And so, yeah, she's like, good, when she leaves, basically to be stern with him. Back to the scrapyard. So they do a test. They got 21 batteries, and Jesse in this big truck, and Jesse is about 8 to 10 feet away. He's holding a laptop, and you see the scrapyard guy. He's so fired up. He wants this to work. So Jesse's about that 8 to 10 feet away. Nothing's happening, but Walt continues to ratchet up the battery. So start walking towards it. And as we see, he takes a couple steps. The computer, all the info is wiped, and then it slams into the side of the truck.
Yeah, big celebration coming from Jesse. There, he's pumped the whole time. Mike is, just kind of disapproving of the idea. He doesn't want anything to do with it. He's there, I think, but he's only there because, he's like, you guys are idiots. This is never going to work. And sure enough, they have a legit plan of kind of wiping their any mark they have from Gustavo Fring, as long as they get this going. And I believe after this, we take a sneaky little trip to the ATB.
Yeah. So Mike, it starts their plan. Mike goes to the gate, sprays it with pepper spray, or a spray of some kind so nobody can see them on the camera. And he breaks into the electronic panel, opens the gate. So then Walt and Jesse drive in with this little camper van, and they park alongside the evidence building. So they're on the outside, but they're close enough where they're hoping with 48 batteries now. They've increased it by 20 because they want you see a picture of the back of the truck. It's just loaded with batteries, and they're hoping that this will work. And Walt starts it. It starts compressing. It starts moving, and we just it's a really cool shot because you don't see Walt doing it anymore. You just see the room, and you see all the magnetic things start to shake and start to move towards the wall.
Yeah, it's cool. It starts basically with a paper clip on the table, and you can start to see it move a little bit. And just in perspective, they don't know if it's working or not. All they know is that basically they're on the outside looking in, thinking, okay, well, if it's working, like we've really just taking a guess on this. And you can start to see the metal, lighting pans start to move, but then obviously some other things start to go and stuff starts falling off the shelf, but not before the computer that the guard is using. And this obviously raises some major alarms for our good friends inside the force.
Right. So he hears the door, the alarm goes off, and he runs in. You just see stuff hammering the wall, and he goes like, "What the hell is going on, guys?" He goes, "Say there's a breach in there. They're on the outside. They're on the outside." But we see Walter go, "No, Jesse, not yet. We're not leaving yet." And he cranks it all the way to the end, and everything just smashes against the wall. And it's even to the point where the truck tips on its side towards the building. And before the cops can come out and arrest them, Jesse and Walter are able to escape with the truck still leaning on the side of the building.
Yeah. You'd think that it wouldn't be much of a success, but for Walter, he's satisfied. He's in the car. Mike's bitching him out, basically, what the hell? Like, how is that successful? You left the thing. But Walter had it all planned. He said, there's no registration to the magnet. There's no registration to the vehicle. And there's basically nothing tying us back to that. So we basically just got off scot-free. And obviously there's a scene where, Mike's like, how do we trust you? How do we have faith that this plan works? And Walter's just kind of smirking in the back, and he goes, because it's me. Or he basically says, because I put it together.
Because I said so.
So yeah, he's in his own zone. He's very happy with himself of this great master plan that he thinks he's schemed up. But obviously, Mike, knowing his history, doesn't have full faith in old Mr. White.
No, Mike hates him very much. He just can't stand the guy. But we do see the next day they're counting the evidence, and they're there looking at it, Hank and Gomi, and the computer's completely destroyed. The screen's cracked. Everything on it is dead. So our group of three have accomplished their goal. They cannot be, tracked via, this route. And for now, the three of them are safe.
Yes, but not before evidence was a picture. If we remember, Gustavo's brother, they were, they had like this picture frame together, and one of the picture frames got broken. But while it was broken, we can see that there was some writing behind the picture. And from what I could tell, Juggy, it kind of looked almost like IP addresses, or some kind of, some kind of location. So clearly they did successfully break one piece of evidence, but maybe there's more that they gave to the cops without even knowing. So
yeah, I think what it was, Shay, like you said, we'll get into this in the next episode. It might have been like the IP address to these offshore accounts that we learn about, kind of the secret code, if you will, to how Gus has been paying people under the table. It's not directly to their bank account, but in offshore accounts where they can take the money out without government and the DEA noticing. So yeah, they do uncover some information. The episode ends in an interesting way. Walt goes to see Saul, and he's mad that Saul allowed Skylar to spend his money. He goes, I'm like, I hired you. What the hell are you doing? Like, why you couldn't have called me up? You couldn't have done something. He goes, well, you're pretty busy if you remember, and she's my client too. So, I'm a man of integrity, and I don't, and he goes, he basically calls him a piece of shit lawyer, and Saul tries to end the relationship.
Yeah, he says, this is done. This client, this client privilege is over. We have no connection anymore. And it's a scene where Walter kind of gives him the stare, and then he slowly gets up from his chair and starts to walk around the desk. Saul, being Saul's obviously, scared shitless, kind of starts to back away, and Walter gets right in his face and basically says, I'll end this relationship when I say so. And yeah, he lets him know that he's in charge. He wears the pants, and Saul is basically just like, yeah, like there's nothing you can do. He obviously scared of him enough to keep that relationship intact.
Right. He knows how dangerous he is now. I mean, he's killed a bunch of people. He killed Gustavo, who, just for context, Saul was beyond afraid of Gustavo. And so he's staying with him just because he's basically being forced to. So that's how this episode ends. So they've locked up that, but I really enjoyed this episode because you learn about this company called Magical, and that's what this episode is called. That was the company really associated with Los Pollos Hermanos. They were the offshore German company that really helped distribute a lot of the chicken, and they're associated with a lot of restaurants. So this episode starts, and it's interesting. It's these group of German scientists, and they're basically getting this man, a boss of sorts, to try out their new condiment flavors. So they're talking about this ranch and new barbecue, and French, right? Yeah,
ranch and French onion.
This guy has no facial expression. He's just taking the little tater tot, eating it, and before they can even stop their little soliloquy about what makes it great, he just eats another one. And he's just no facial expression, nothing.
Yeah. You could tell something's, it's just off about this guy. He's clearly very powerful, but to what sense does he actually care about this company? We have no idea, because he's got the stone face. He's got the Gustavo stone face going on, and his employees are kind of like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? Is this guy even paying attention? And before anything can happen, a receptionist kind of comes in the room and says, there's 3 guys outside that want to speak to you. I think you should come talk to them.
Right. So he takes one more tater tot, eats that, and then we see him, he asks them to leave, and he walks through the building. And as he gets close to his office, we see it's police. So this guy is clearly caught up in something. He's walking throughout the building now. He works for Magical Electromotive. And we see them taking off Los Pollos Hermanos sign. So clearly he's affiliated with this chicken company. And so we know he's in trouble. So this guy goes in the bathroom, but he's not empty-handed. He goes in with an emergency kit for when you're having like a heart attack, or, I think they used this on Rich Peverly in the NHL a few years ago when you collapse on a bench. This is what you use. But instead, he puts the tape on his chest, like is normal, but he sticks the electronic piece in his mouth and basically starts it while the police are at the door asking to talk to him, Mr. Schuler, and basically hits clear, and he's gone.
Yeah, takes his own life, and because he's on the toilet, he gets this, this long flush coming after his death, which I thought was funny. A lot of similarities to Gus, though. He's very proper in the way he took off his shirt, hung everything up. Clear, very businessman-like, but he's got a guilty conscience, and he took his life knowing, okay, well, do I face the wrath of the police, or do I get out of this the easy way? So yeah, clearly some affiliates, and this is where we see the background of what Los Polos was and who Gus was really working with on the other side of the country, or on the side of the world. Sorry.
Yeah, Germans, like you said. So that happens. Then we see Jesse, and Walter's kind of scrubbing dishes. We kind of see this go through a bunch of different things, but Jesse's calling Walt, worrying about the cigarette. As you remember, he thought it was ricin that Brock took to poison him, but he hasn't been able to find the cigarette. So he's like, what happened to it? Like, is this just too strange? Like, what really happened here? So Walt, obviously, scumbag, gave the kid Lily of the Valley, which is poisonous when you eat it. But he's got to make Jesse think that, it's not the ricin. We'll find it. So he makes up another batch, puts it on a cigarette, and he goes over to Jesse's for a scavenger hunt, knowing that he's not going to find anything.
Yeah, he does a thorough job of cleaning Jesse's house for him, but knowing that this whole time, the cigarette that he made is actually in the Roomba. For those who don't know, a Roomba is kind of an automatic vacuum cleaner that goes around your house and picks up off when you're not home. So they look and look, and Walter says, he points at it, and Jesse's like, no, I've already looked like a week ago. And they say, well, might as well give it another chance. And Jesse finds it, and obviously relieved. Jesse cared a lot about whether or not someone were to find this and to hurt themselves. So he was more than relieved, and obviously Walter even more relieved that Jesse thinks, oh, it was no one stole it from me, I just lost it.
Right. And you see his face. Walt goes and flushes, says, it's all good, Jesse. But Jesse has this interesting response where he starts crying uncontrollably. And it's not because he's happy Brock is going to be safe, nobody's going to get hurt, like you said, but it's more about he doubted Walter. He said, I was going to kill you. And he's crying, apologizing for doing this. And we know that Walt was a shitty partner, but he says, Jesse, no, don't worry about it. Like, we're a good partnership. Like, we all make mistakes. We've been through a lot, but it's just important that we move forward with our next act.
Yeah, it gives them the real guilt trip. Like, oh, it wasn't your, that was okay. It wasn't your fault, but we got to keep working. And obviously, they intend to do something more than stick around and, get rid of evidence and whatnot. So who do they go to? Well, they go to someone with the expertise, the knowledge, and the connections that would be able to reestablish himself in the meth making game.
Right. So they go and see Mike. And Mike's just trying to have a beer, enjoy a nice day, but they come in and, Walt gives him his elevator pitch. Like, me and Jesse, we're going to find a new place to cook, not the RV, but we're obviously going to lose money at the start because I owe Jesse 40 large. And, but we know what we didn't know before. Like, we need, distribution, the people in this business. You can do it that way. We'll cook. Like we had before, but you're not to go. We can trust you. And Mike politely just says, no, thanks. Like, I'm good. I'm done. And, Walter's like, well, why, Mike? Like, we can make money here. And he says, well, Walter, it's because you're a ticking time bomb. I don't like you. You crush everything you touch. And I don't want to be around when your bomb goes boom.
Yeah. Perhaps a little foreshadowing, but we'll see as we get into it.
Fortunately.
But yeah, no, I mean, Mike has every reason not to like Walter. Walter, it's literally, he's killed his boss. He's
and friend, I think. I think him and
well,
Gus
yeah,
were
it seems like a friend.
Yeah,
I'd say they were more than just more than just a professional level, definitely a personal level as well. Yeah. And probably some, I can't remember off the top of my head, but probably some of Mike's men as well.
Yeah.
Treated Mike pretty poorly for the most part, and treated his men poorly. And for him, Walter has no respect for anyone other than himself. So yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense. And well, Jesse's kind of there. Jesse doesn't say much. He kind of likes both of these guys a lot,
Mhm.
maybe one more than the other, but he does kind of give give Mike the, we could do a lot here. We can be very successful together kind of spiel.
Right. Yeah. And Mike clearly likes Jesse because he calls him kid, but he does it with an affectionate tone. It's not like, oh, hey, kid, like putting him down. Jesse's important to Mike. And he kind of says, if I was you, I'd get the hell out of here too. Like, just stop doing this. Like, you can move on. You're young. Like, figure something else out. But he's committed to Walter, especially after learning how Brock, was not poisoned by Walt. So we pivot to the Germans.
Exactly.
We see that the Germans are meeting with the DEA. Basically, Magical is meeting with the DEA, and they're kind of, they're saying, hey, Mr. Schuler, we thought he was a good guy. We thought he represented this company well. Just kind of the spiel, just bury this one guy. But clearly he was a rat. And we had no idea that he was this low a character. We can't believe that he represented the company this way. And, we didn't know, and basically, we're free in the clear now, but we're just glad that he's no longer a problem.
Yeah, and he said we'll give full cooperation. Wherever you want to see payroll, yada yada yada, and they're kind of perked up because obviously this is a big step for them to finding out what remains with Gus's I guess drug empire beyond the Los Polos. And there's one girl there, and she's kind of taking it all in, and she gives kind of a concerned look. And we'll get into her a little bit later, but we find out that she has something more to do than just frying chicken.
Right. So we see Mike at a diner, and she comes sit down with her big fancy sunglasses on, and she sits at the opposite booth, and she goes, can I get like a chamomile tea? And she goes, yeah, we don't got that. She goes, can I get, this kind of fancy Starbucks coffee? Like, no, like we don't got it. So she finally gets this warm water with lemon or something. And Mike goes, so you're going to come sit with me, or am I going to sit with you? And she goes, no, we'll just talk like this. He goes, I guess I'm coming to you then. And it's this funny scene where she comes back. She tells the waitress, oh, Daryl, it's so good to see you. I didn't know like you'd be here.
Yeah.
And the waitress goes, need anything more, Mike?
Yeah, this girl clearly out of her element, and this girl, she's frantic. She's like, listen, she's like, I came here with problems, and here's something that we need to discuss. And she basically slides over a list of 11 names, and we find out that there are 11 names that are associated that could essentially roll over for the DEA and get them into a lot of trouble. And Mike's at this point a little ticked off and goes, what are you implying, that you want me to take these people out? And this girl goes, no, I'm not lying, but imagine how much easier life would be if they were gone.
Right. And he goes, they're not going to roll on me because they get paid through offshore accounts. And even in this situation, they still have hazard pay basically to shut up. So, Chow, a Chinese man, we saw Mike shoot him in the hand earlier in season 4. So he's getting paid. All the, Dennis from the laundry, who we saw that Gomi talked about to get in the search. These guys they're going to be fine. They're not going to say anything, and you just need to simmer down.
Yeah, this girl is clearly frantic. She's very shaken, and she just kind of says, she has no choice but to listen to Mike and say, okay, well, that's that. And obviously Mike, a little ticked off, but he'll take it because this is what you get for being in an organization like this. This girl is clearly high up in Magical. Is that what you call Magical? So, Magical obviously is a parent company to Los Polos. So this girl obviously was doing some dealings up high with Gustavo, and Mike knows Mike on a personal level as well. If obviously she's just walking up to him and say, hey, can you kill these people for me?
Yeah. And it's also interesting because she asked who killed Gus, and he didn't tell her.
Yeah, that is true. I never really thought of that, but I mean, and she goes, "What about the cooks? What about this and that?" So clearly, she doesn't know as much. I feel like she's kind of out of the loop with a lot of things. She just kind of knows who's on the payroll and who can be tied back to their dealings.
Right. So next scene is one of my favorites of the two episodes. Mike is called down to the DEA to meet. He sees Chow in the hallway, and he basically says, he they took his money, like they seized it for right now. That's a problem. But he said, I didn't say nothing, Mike. I promise. Like, don't worry. It was no good. I know you didn't, but basically saying you dare say anything, because then I'll come find you. But he goes and sits with Hank and Gomi, and basically he says, I did background checks for Los Polos. I was security for them, and he I didn't know anything about meth or anything, but I just did background checks for the company.
Yeah, and he's getting grilled pretty hard because he's like, "Oh, well, you see, you were a cop in Philadelphia, and there was a little bit of a dramatic exit here, to you leaving. Why would Gustavo hire anyone with that kind of baggage, basically? And what's to gain from that?" And you could see that Mike is getting more and more irritated as Hank pushes and pushes every button he has. And Mike, to his credit, just kind of goes, "No, I don't know nothing about that." And he says, I don't know. Gus hired me to check fry cookers.
Right. And he thinks, they say, well, actually, we got a witness that can place you in that lab. So they're about ready to roll on you, unless you tell us a story that we really like, and then we'll see what we can do. But Mike's like, yeah, basically, kiss my ass. Am I under arrest? Because otherwise I'm leaving. Like, no, go ahead. But as he's walking to the door, Hank mentions, oh yeah, forgot to mention to you. Yeah, we found this bank account with close to $2 million in it. And it was made out for a one Kaylee Ermintrout, which is Hank's granddaughter. And
Mike's granddaughter.
Yeah, Mike, sorry. Yeah, Mike's granddaughter. He says, cute little thing, but the government is going to take all that money. And, I think a lot of the other guys that had these offshore accounts, the money's going to be gone too. So, Mike, if you don't want to go to jail, maybe it's time to start talking.
Mike's credit, he says, "I don't know nothing about that," and kind of proceeds to leave. But I mean, like right there, he has a perfect opportunity to roll over, and Hank's indirectly giving him a deal, saying, "Oh, you might get some of that money. Oh, you might not do that much time." But Mike is loyal, and we see this throughout the show. He was loyal to Gus, and he's loyal to his guys he has on right now. The big question is, can they be loyal to him?
Right. That's the big question as we move forward here. So then we pivot to Jesse, Walt, and Saul. They meet to discuss starting up the Empire again. Walt obviously wants a new location, but Saul says, no, you idiots, like, retire, like, just get out. Like, you're lucky enough that you're not in jail right now. But Walt said, what have we accomplished? I'm broke. Jesse's broke. We need to make some money. And, we need to find a new location, and, us three will be three-way partners.
Yeah, and basically says, okay, so Jesse, how's it going for product? We need stuff to cook with, and Jesse has everything except for methylamine, and obviously we know methylamine, key ingredient to making what they make. And he says, oh, we can go back to I forget what they were using before. We can go back to basically what they were using at the RV. And Walter says, not a chance. We are not using that. We only use methylamine. You got to keep looking. Kind of pushes Jesse in the sense saying you got to go out there and find it, because that's all we're using if we're going back to this.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, they're stuck to their ways, and they're kind of no resolution yet. But Mike gets a call. Let's pivot back to Mike. He gets a call from Chow, and he says, he said he needs to talk to him. The DEA took all his money. yeah, and he needs to pay some bills. He doesn't know what the hell he's gonna do. Like, he's so worried. He says, "Can you please come over?" And he says, "No, don't worry. Like, we'll deal with it." But as we see Chow on the phone, he's sitting on the couch, and there's a man with basically a silencer gun pointing it right at his head.
Question for you. Do you think Mike knew something was suspicious the minute he got that call from him?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, because I think
Yeah.
Chow would have just ratted on him. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't call Mike because Mike's already shot him. So you probably wouldn't be like, "Okay, I'm gonna alert Mike that I'm a little bit hesitant about my loyalty to this plan, like to Gus and to him." I think you just go talk to the DA, cut a deal, and hope for the best.
Yeah, no, I agree. So Mike kind of shows up to Chow's house and, he kind of gets out, he looks around and he kind of walks up and, this guy clearly waiting. He's kind of just sitting at the door. He's got the gun at the eye spot or the eye opening and he's ready to shoot on go. And he starts hearing this noise.
Mhm.
And he's like, oh, you're like, what the hell is that? He looks out and there's just something moving. You can't see much, but you just see something moving. And the camera pans out and it's this pig, this kind of dinky pig that has this electric motor in it, and it's kind of moving. And sure enough, Mike's behind the guy, silencer in hands, and he's clearly outsmarted this guy probably for a second time.
Yeah. So he tells him to sit down. He does, and he goes, "Why are you doing this?" Because they took my money, Mike. Like, I need to make money. And he says, "Well, who?" And he says, the woman told me to do it. Like, she told me she'd give me 10 grand a pop for every informant, and she gave me 30 large to kill you. And Mike says, "Do you mean Lydia?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, Mike and before he can even get more out, Mike shoots him 3 times in the chest.
Yeah. So this guy before, we didn't mention him. He killed Chow. So Chow was gone, and now this guy, I'm assuming one of Mike's men, also gone.
Yeah.
And then Mike basically, he knows what he has to do. He basically arrives at this lady's house, and she's just getting home from work. He's in her room, and outside the room is the maid and this Lydia's daughter, her young daughter. And he's listening to the call, like, oh, like I'll be right there. Mike grabs her mouth, basically says, "Don't say a word if you want your daughter to live."
Yeah. So she tells the nanny to take her to bed, tuck her in, whatever. Then you leave. Like, I'm good for the night. Just I'm gonna take a shower. Just please leave. So she takes her daughter to bed, and Mike says, "Lydia, I know what you did, and you're gonna have to pay for it." And she's hysterical, and she goes, "Oh, no, you got to call somebody. She can't find my body." She wakes up every night to go to the bathroom, and he goes, "Oh, nobody's ever gonna find you." And she's like, "No, she can't think I ran away, Mike. She can't think." And he's like, shut up. And here's the nanny leave, and Mike has her right in the crosshairs. He can kill her. Nobody would hear a thing. But this is the thing. Can he not do it, or does he think about the meth? What do you think? Because he asks her, "Can you get methylamine?" And she says, yeah, I think so. And he lets her live. I wonder if it's a mix of both. What do you think, Shay? Was it more he couldn't kill her because she had a daughter? Or, I kind of thought about that.
I think it definitely ties into him having a granddaughter of his own, and thinking, okay, well, if his daughter, who, spoiler, is the granddaughter's mother, if she was to die, well, how would that look, and how would that daughter's life grow up? And probably that did glance over his eye, but he had an opportunity to also use that to his advantage, and basically said, well, I know this girl's got connections, and I'm broke right now, which I think is what he was mainly thinking of. I have no money. All this money I saved up for my granddaughter, which he basically doesn't spend any money on himself, as you said before, and
Yeah.
only spends it on his granddaughter. Basically, okay, I'm gonna give her the money, and I have to get back to making something, or I'm gonna leave my granddaughter with nothing. So I think
Right.
that's crossing his mind, and obviously that other part about killing a mother, basically. 'Cause I don't think Mike just outright kills women. He doesn't seem like that type of
No.
guy.
No, I don't think he just outright kills people in general. Like I think he doesn't enjoy killing people. I don't think. Like, he killed that guy because he turned on him. He had a good reason to. In Mexico, he killed that man with the necklace because he killed one of his men, and he tried to kill Gus. So he acts in self-preservation more than anything. So yeah, I agree. I don't think he could have killed her, but he also thought, okay, she can help me move forward, get me out of this financial burden. And so after that, he gets in the car and he calls Walter. Walter's doing dishes, and basically says he's changed his mind. He wants to move forward, and Walt's all for it.
Brings out a nice little grin, and it's probably killing Mike as much as he hates it. But now Mike's kind of now he's in a spot where basically he has to do something. He can't just leave his daughter and granddaughter with nothing. So basically that's is a scenario right now, and he's kind of have to turn to the dark side, unfortunately, because he has no other choice.
Right. So that gives us to our last scene of this episode, and good golly, this is so throughout these two episodes, Skylar has barely left her bed. She's sleeping in. She's not around for breakfast or dinner. And she's very, she's just staying in bed, staying away from Walter, basically. And then this kind of depression. And he gets into bed and he says, "You missed a great lasagna earlier," whatever, going through his little spiel. But then he just lays sideways next to her and just starts kissing her all over. And he says, "It's gonna be fine.
Her, yeah.
We're good now, and it's gonna be great." And she's just kind of laying there, and we just see tears start rolling down her eyes while he's just, kissing her all over.
Yeah, very uncomfortable. She's like, "Oh, like this thing with Ted and your guilt." The sociopath that Walter is, because clearly he feels no guilt over anything that he's done. Whether it's taking lives or ruining lives for that matter by cooking meth. Like he doesn't care, and he's like, "Oh, like you're guilty now, but you'll be fine. You'll be fine in a couple days." Like, you know what I mean? Like he's acting like this is the cold, but ultimately this is really affecting Skylar in a negative impact, as she, she fears for her life basically, and she doesn't really know what kind of what to do, and she doesn't know, what the move to go from here.
Right. So yeah, she's very much just in a holding pattern. She's kind of like a prisoner. She's stuck in this really bad situation. So she doesn't know what her next move is yet. We do know that Mike, Walter, and Jesse are going to be moving forward cooking meth. We don't know where yet, so we have that to uncover. And also next week, there's still a lot of informants out there that have lost their money, and we got to deal with that. Really interesting episode 3. I think it's a really good one of this season. It's a underrated one for me that I really enjoy, which we'll see a lot of the prison and Mike get to interact with these guys. So that's a good one. But good episodes this week. Good start to season 5, where you're wrapping up the Gus thing, but it's also still very prevalent, which I enjoy because he was just such an interesting character. But Shay, it's only Tuesday, but a short week with Remembrance Day on Thursday, so no work on Thursday. Any plans? Anything you got on the go for the rest of this week?
Gonna take in some good NHL going on right now. Got to see my Browns win on Sunday, and probably return home for a few days just to see the fam, and probably just relax, taking some live Ranger hockey maybe on Saturday night. Hopefully you'll be present and running the booth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Yeah, there's only 3 weeks left. It's only 3 weeks left to college football, man. I got it. It's sad. It's sad.
I
hearing myself say that.
Okay, I get it to you.
It's sad.
Cou- couple questions for you.
Yeah.
Oh, couple questions to run by you for since we're approaching Remembrance Day. Do you often have somebody you think about, or a family member, even a friend of a friend who is in the military or was in the military at some point?
Um, nobody in my family in particular, but to be honest, normally I look up soldiers, Canadian soldiers that have died over the calendar year. You can do that on a government website, and I think you just kind of see their faces and really appreciate what they do for us, and obviously giving their life. I also, this is obviously a tougher one, but I like war films. I know you do too, but that's something me and Dad have really bonded over. And recently I rewatched World War II in color. I recommend that to anybody that hasn't seen it. It's on Netflix. It's not only extremely compelling, but it tells you just how devastating that time period was. And, just the amount of loss we had in Canada and just around the world. So I just kind of think of the bigger picture. I think of just learning, reading Anne Frank and, what certain people went through. And something I've done for probably a decade now is at 11 o'clock on Thursday, I stop what I'm doing. I just stand there in silence, whether I'm with myself or people for 2 minutes. And I don't say anything. I don't do anything for those 2 minutes. I think if you can do that for 2 minutes for what everybody's done for us, I don't think that's too much to ask. How about yourself?
No, absolutely. Yeah. I've fully support that for Thursday. There's been times where I've got caught, maybe lacking. I was doing something and I did forget. So, but, I'm guilty of that. I've made it an active notice. Remember every 11th, and yeah, no, same as you. My second part of that was, if there's a rewatch war film that you always watch, but like as you said, World War II in color, which I think I'll probably partake in this year. I've never seen it, to be honest, so I'd
It's
probably
really
like to
good.
get some perspective into it and watch it. So is there any other flicks that you usually toss on? I know you and your father often watch Black Hawk Down. Is that a
Yeah.
recurring one for you guys?
Yeah. Black Hawk Down's one. I probably watched that one for the first time too early in life, but I watched Seinfeld and a lot of other things probably a little sooner than I should have. But
Probably.
Black Hawk Down, one that I think we watched, you might have seen it before we watched it together. We watched Fury a few years ago. I really enjoyed that film, actually. Normally Brad Pitt's not my cup of tea, but I enjoyed that film. Any kind of war movie for me is something I like to just watch and kind of appreciate. And like you said, it's an important holiday. Yes, it's a day off work, but it's more about just honoring and respecting the people that have lost their lives so that we can have the freedoms that we enjoy every day.
Yeah, yeah. People than us going over being drafted to the military. I mean, we don't
Yeah.
we have no idea what it would be like for someone to knock on our door and say, "Hey, you have to go across the world and battle that's you might not even consider your own battle." So no, unbelievable, and yeah, highly looking forward to watching that film.
Yeah. So everybody, we'll be back next week. I'll be back podcasting tomorrow, but Remembrance Day, there will be some podcasts, but it's more about the day, and truly appreciate, like Shamus said, just it's an important holiday, and our veterans and our current soldiers are so important. So let's truly honor them and respect them on the one of the most important days of the year in this country. So until next week, stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll talk soon.